What would you do if the man who destroyed your entire world became the only person who could save you? Lena Martins has spent 10 years running from a past she can't remember, until the night a dying stranger collapses in her ER with a wound that should be fatal, blood that shouldn't exist, and eyes that burn with impossible recognition. When he whispers, "I've been looking for you for 10 years, ever since the night I killed your family," her carefully rebuilt life shatters. But the truth is so much worse than murder. He's a Nephilim, an abomination torn between angel and demon, heaven and hell, and she's the descendant of a blood deal that marks her for execution. The Celestial Council has sent their most ruthless hunter to finish what he failed to complete a decade ago. Now Kale offers her an impossible choice: learn to wield the same deadly power that flows through her veins, fake her own death convincingly enough to fool an executioner who's never failed, or die slowly as a lesson to every supernatural creature that some sins can never be forgiven. She has 7 days to become a weapon. 7 days to master killing and healing with equal precision. 7 days before she returns to the burned ruins of her childhood home and gambles everything on a performance that will either set them both free or destroy them completely. Because when the hunter finally arrives, and Lena looks into the empty silver eyes of the man who once killed his own soulmate to prove his loyalty, she'll have to answer the question that will determine both their fates. Will you stay if I strip myself bare? And discover that some sacrifices are worse than death itself. The blood wouldn't stop. Lena Martins pressed her palms against the gash splitting the stranger's abdomen, her scrubs already soaked crimson to the elbows. 3 a.m. in County General's ER, and she'd seen worse. Knife wounds, gunshots, bones jutting through skin like broken branches. 10 years of night shifts had carved something, cold and efficient where her heart used to live. But this was different. The man on her gurney shouldn't be alive. The wound gaped obscenely, deep enough that she could see the white gleam of spine beneath shredded muscle. No paramedics had brought him in. No ambulance. He'd simply appeared in the ambulance bay, collapsed against the automatic doors, leaving a trail of blood black as oil under the fluorescent lights. "Get me 2 units of O-negative," Lena snapped at the nurse hovering uselessly nearby. "And page surgery, now." The stranger's hand shot up, iron fingers clamping around her wrist. His eyes opened. One burned gold like a coin held to sunlight. The other churned slate gray, dark as a winter storm. They didn't blink in unison. The gold eye focused on her face, while the gray one tracked the shadows pooling in the corners of the room, watching, hunting. The left side of his face radiated heat against her skin. The right felt cold as a corpse 3 days dead. "Don't," he rasped. His voice scraped out broken, but underneath ran something else. Something that made her spine lock rigid, and every primitive instinct scream to run. "Don't call anyone." "You're dying," Lena said flatly. Her hand stayed pressed to his wound, professional despite the wrongness singing through her bones. "You need surgery or you'll bleed out in the next 15 minutes. "No." His grip tightened. His skin burned and froze simultaneously where he touched her, like pressing her palm to dry. Ice wrapped in heated metal. "Just you, please." She should have called security, should have sedated him and let the trauma team swarm. Instead, she met those impossible, mismatched eyes and felt something crack open in her chest. Something that had been sealed shut since she was 17 years old, standing in the rain outside 3 closed caskets, wondering why she'd survived when everyone she loved had burned. "Let go," she whispered. "I can't help you if you don't let go." He released her wrist. His hand fell back to the gurney, trembling. She noticed scars then, dozens of them, crisscrossing his forearms in deliberate patterns. Not the chaotic marks of accident or defense. These were purposeful, ritualistic, each line perfectly parallel, like tally marks, carved by someone keeping meticulous count. Lena grabbed gauze, packing the wound even as her rational mind catalogued impossibilities. The injury was too clean, too precise. like something had reached inside him and torn, not cutting from outside but erupting outward. And the blood itself seemed wrong, too dark, too thick, moving sluggishly as if reluctant to leave his body. "What's your name?" she asked, working automatically, her hands moving through practiced motions while her brain scrambled to process. "Cale." The word came out rough. Pain threaded through it, but also something else. Recognition, maybe. Like he'd known she would ask. Like he'd been waiting for this exact moment, in this exact room with this exact woman pressing bloodied hands to his dying flesh. Cale what? Just Cale. Her hands pressed deeper, and she felt it. The wound was closing. Not healing exactly, but responding to her touch in a way that made medical sense crumble like ash. Where her blood mixed with his, the torn edges of flesh seemed to remember their original shape, drawn together by something beyond sutures or surgery. Impossible. Lena's breath caught. She'd always been good with trauma cases, better than her. Colleagues could explain. Patients survived on her shifts who should have died. Wounds stabilized under her hands when every statistic screamed otherwise. She'd chalked it up to luck. Skill. Refusing to acknowledge the small voice whispering that maybe, just maybe, she was the variable that didn't fit the equation. "What are you?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Cale's mismatched eyes fixed on her face. The gold one held something ancient and grieving. The gray one held hunger, cold, and patient as a winter that never ends. Steam rose from his skin in thin wisps, condensation forming on the metal rails of the gurney, where heat met cold in the war zone of his body. "Someone who doesn't deserve your help," he said softly. "But I'm asking anyway." Her hands kept working. The bleeding had slowed to a seep. She could see the muscle knitting together beneath her touch, defying everything she'd learned in medical school. His breathing steadied, deepened. Color returned to his face, though it remained stark, divided. The left side flushed with warmth. The right stayed pallid, bloodless. "You should be dead," Lena whispered. "I am." His lips curved into something too broken to be called a smile. Just taking longer than expected. The ER doors burst open. Dr. Morrison, the attending, stormed in with 2 residents. "Martins, what the hell is this? We got a report of a code black in..." He stopped. Stared. The stranger's wound had closed to an angry red line, already scabbing. Over. What should have required hours of surgery had sealed itself in minutes. The amount of blood coating Lena's scrubs, the floor, the gurney, told a story that the man's intact abdomen now contradicted. "False alarm," Lena heard herself say. Her voice sounded distant, hollow. Superficial laceration looked worse than it was. Morrison's gaze swept from her to the stranger, to the impossible amount of blood. His jaw worked, but they were understaffed, drowning in Saturday night violence, and questioning the miracle meant paperwork neither of them had time for. "Clean him up and get him out of here," Morrison finally said. "We need this bed." The doors swung shut behind him. Silence filled the space between Lena and the man who called himself Cale. She should walk away. Clock out. Forget this ever happened. Instead, she pulled up a stool and sat, her legs suddenly unreliable. "Who are you?" she asked again. Cale pushed himself upright slowly. His shirt hung in shredded ribbons, revealing a torso carved with more of those deliberate scars. They formed patterns she almost recognized, symbols that itched at the back of her mind like half-remembered dreams. On his back, she glimpsed marks that looked fresher, angrier. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. "Someone who's been looking for you," he said quietly. "For a long time." Ice flooded Lena's veins. "What?" 10 years. His mismatched eyes held hers, and she saw it then. Recognition. Not just of her face, but of something. Deeper. Something that made her want to run and stay in equal, terrifying measure. "I've been looking for you for 10 years, Lena Martins. Ever since the night I killed your family." The world tilted. She was standing. When had she stood? Her hands shook, still covered in his blood. In her blood. In the blood that had somehow mixed and healed him when he should have died. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, suddenly too bright, too loud, exposing every impossible truth she'd spent a decade trying to ignore. "Get out." Her voice came out steady, cold, the same voice she used to pronounce time of death. "Get out before I call security and have you arrested." Kyle slid off the gurney. He moved like water, like shadow, like something wearing human skin, but not quite fitting inside it correctly. At the door, he paused. Steam still rose from his left shoulder. Frost crystallized on his right. "I won't run again," he said. "When you're ready to know why you survived, I'll be waiting." He walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. Lena stood alone in the empty bay, surrounded by blood that shouldn't exist, staring at her hands that had done something impossible. The scars on her palms itched, the ones she'd gotten the night of the fire, the night she'd pressed her 7-year-old hands to her mother's burning skin and felt the flames die under her touch, the night she'd woken 3 days later in a hospital with no memory and ash under her fingernails, the night a stranger with mismatched eyes had supposedly killed everyone she loved and saved her. Lena didn't sleep. She drove home as dawn bled across the Dallas skyline, her hands locked on the steering wheel, knuckles bone white. The blood had dried on her scrubs, stiff and dark. She'd scrubbed her palms raw in the hospital bathroom, watching pink water swirl down the drain, but she could still feel it. The wrongness of his blood mixing with hers. The way flesh had moved under her touch like clay remembering its shape. The way he'd said her name. Her apartment was a shoebox studio in a building that should have been condemned 5 years ago. She unlocked 3 deadbolts, stepped inside, and immediately knew she wasn't alone. He sat in her only chair, the one by the window overlooking the fire escape. Morning light cut across his face, and she saw it clearly now. The division. His left side seemed to glow faintly, warmth radiating in visible waves that made the air shimmer. His right side absorbed light, a shadow that clung too close, independent of the sun's angle. The mismatched eyes tracked her with predatory stillness. "I changed the locks last month," Lena said. Her voice didn't shake. 10 years of night shifts, of holding pressure on gunshot wounds while gang members screamed threats, had carved steel into her spine. Breaking and entering. Should I add that to murder? "You want answers?" Kyle's voice was quieter than she remembered, rough as gravel scraped across bone. "You wouldn't have come home if you didn't." He was right. She'd driven past her building twice, circled the block, parked 3 streets over. Some animal part of her brain had known he'd be here, had wanted him here, despite everything. Despite the impossible words still echoing in her skull. Lena dropped her keys on the counter, didn't take off her jacket, kept herself between him and the door. "Talk. You have 5 minutes before I call 911. You were 7 years old." Kyle didn't move, but something in him shifted. The heat side of his face flickered brighter. The cold side seemed to pull shadows from the corners. "August 14th. Your family's house on Maple Street. I was sent to kill all of you." The date punched through her chest. She'd spent 10 years trying to forget that night. The screaming, the heat, waking up in the hospital with a social worker's pitying eyes and the news delivered in a voice too gentle. "House fire. No survivors. Except you, sweetheart. You're so lucky. Such a miracle." "Why?" The word scraped out. "Your bloodline." He leaned forward, and she saw the scars on his forearms clearly now in the daylight. Hundreds of them. Thin white lines carved with surgical precision, layered over each other like pages in a book written in skin. Your great-grandmother made a deal with something she shouldn't have, paid in blood for power she didn't understand. The debt passed down through generations. By the time it reached your family, the interest had compounded into something too dangerous to let live. Lena's throat closed. Her mother had been ordinary, a paralegal who brought work home in cardboard boxes. Her father had taught high school chemistry, came home smelling like chalk dust and formaldehyde. Her older brother had been obsessed with baseball cards and terrible punk music. Normal. They'd been so terribly, beautifully normal. "You're insane," she whispered. "Your blood heals things it shouldn't." Kale's gold eye held hers while the gray one flickered to her hands. "You've always known. Every patient that survives your shift when the statistics say they won't. Every wound that closes faster under your touch. You tell yourself it's skill, luck, coincidence, but you know better." She did. God help her, she did. The knowing sat like a stone in her chest, had lived there for 10 years, alongside the grief and the guilt and the questions that had no rational answers. "I set the fire," Kale continued, and his voice dropped lower, scraped, raw with something that sounded like agony. "Celestial fire. Burns hot enough to erase anything with supernatural taint. Your parents died instantly. Mercy, at least. Your brother fought. He almost made it to your room." Lena's knees buckled. She caught herself on the counter, nails digging into cheap laminate. David. Her brother David, who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd check under her bed for monsters, who'd promised he'd always protect her. Why am I alive? The question came out broken. For the first time, Kale looked away. The heat radiating from his left side intensified until she could see sweat beading on his temple. The cold side seemed to frost over, his right eyelashes whitening with ice crystals that melted as quickly as they formed. "I found you in your bedroom," he said quietly. "Pressed into the corner, hands over your face. The fire was everywhere. You should have been dead before I even entered the house. But you'd touched the flames, and they'd died. Just in that small circle around you. Your palms were burned, blistered. But the fire went out where you touched it." Lena looked down at her hands. The scars on her palms were faint now, barely visible. She'd been told they were from the fire. She'd never questioned how a 7-year-old child had gotten symmetrical burns on both palms, as if she'd deliberately pressed them to flame. "I was supposed to finish it," Kyle said. "One child. Easy. Ordained by divine law. I stood there with my blade, and you looked up at me with those eyes. You weren't crying. You were too shocked, too traumatized. You just stared, and I saw myself reflected in your face. What I'd become. What I'd let them turn me into. So you let me live." Bitterness scorched her throat. "How generous. I erased your memory, made you forget everything about that night. Left you alive because I was too weak to finish my mission." His hands curled into fists on his knees. New scars, she noticed. Fresh ones layered over the old. Red and angry. "I've spent 10 years being hunted for my failure. 10 years waiting for them to realize I didn't complete the execution. 10 years knowing that when they found out, they'd send someone else. Someone who wouldn't hesitate." The room felt too small suddenly. Too hot and too cold at once, the air pressure wrong, like standing in the eye of a storm. Lena forced herself to breathe, to think past the roaring in her ears. "Why now?" she asked. "Why show up after 10 years? Kale stood. The movement was fluid, inhuman. He crossed to the window, and she saw his back fully for the first time. His shirt hung loose, and through the tears in the fabric she glimpsed skin covered in marks. Not scars, burns. Hundreds of them, layered so thick they formed a tapestry of destroyed flesh. Each one deliberate, each one identical. Small circles like someone had pressed hot coins to his skin over and over and over. "They found out," he said. 3 days ago, the Celestial Council discovered I'd left a witness alive. They've sent their best hunter. He'll be here within the week. When he finds you, he won't make the mistake I did. He'll kill you slowly, to make sure the bloodline is completely purified. And then he'll kill me for my disobedience. Why are you telling me this? Lena's voice cracked. Why not just disappear? Let me die ignorant. He turned. The mismatched eyes found hers across the small space of her pathetic apartment. Steam rose from his left shoulder. Frost gathered on his right. And between them, in the war zone of his divided body, she saw something she recognized. Something that made her breath catch. Pain. Not physical. Deeper. The kind that came from carrying weight too heavy for one person. For too long. With no hope of ever setting it down. Because you're my mate, Kale said simply. The universe chose you for me a long time ago. Before I killed your family. Before I became what I am. And even though it damns us both, even though it would be kinder to let you die unknowing, I can't. I'm selfish enough to want you to survive. Selfish enough to ask you to trust the man who murdered everyone you loved. The words hung between them like smoke. Lena's hands shook. Her whole body shook. Some distant part of her brain noted clinically that she was going into shock. Should sit down. Drink water. Call someone. Anyone. Instead, she heard herself say, "Prove it. Prove you're not insane. Prove any of this is real." Kyle raised his left hand. The air above his palm shimmered, and light gathered there. Not fire, purer than that. White gold radiance that made her eyes water, that smelled like ozone and something cleaner, like the air after lightning strikes. Then he raised his right hand. Darkness pooled in that palm, thick and viscous, moving like oil, cold enough that frost spread across his fingers. He brought his hands together. The explosion of temperature nearly knocked her off her feet. The light and dark collided, and where they met, reality seemed to tear slightly. She glimpsed something behind the fabric of the world. Wings made of fire and shadow, eyes that multiplied infinitely, a vastness that made her mind scream. Then it was gone. Kyle stood gasping, steam and frost warring across his skin. Blood trickled from his nose. The fresh scars on his arms had split open, weeping red. "Every time I use both sides," he said hoarsely, "it costs me. The war inside never ends. Angel and demon, fighting for control of the same body. I'm an abomination. A Nephilim. The thing celestials hunt and demons use. And you're the human with blood so potent it could tip the balance of everything." Lena's legs gave out. She slid down the cabinet to the floor, wrapped her arms around her knees. Her mind couldn't process this. Wouldn't. But her body knew truth when it felt it. The same way it had always known when a patient would live or die. The same way it had known, the second Kale's blood touched hers, that nothing would ever be normal again. "What do we do?" she whispered. Kale crouched in front of her, careful not to touch. "We run, or we fight. Those are the only options left. Or you kill me yourself." She met his eyes. "End it. No more running for you. No more being hunted. Just finish what you started 10 years ago." Something flickered across his divided face. Horror on one side, understanding on the other. "I can't." "Why not?" His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek but not touching. The heat from his left side warmed her skin. The cold from his right made her shiver. "Because the day I kill you," Kale said softly, "is the day the last piece of my humanity dies. And I've spent 10 years holding on to that last piece. It's all I have left." Lena stared at the man who'd murdered her family, who'd saved her, who was looking at her now like she was the only thing standing between him and an abyss too deep to survive. She reached up and pressed her palm to his face. The burning cold seared through. Her hand instantly, but she didn't pull away. Couldn't. Where her skin met his, something sang. A connection deeper than blood, older than memory. Her palm covered the line where heat met cold on his cheek, and for just a second she felt it. The war inside him. The agony of being torn in two directions every second of every day for longer than she'd been alive. Cale's eyes closed. A sound escaped him, something between a gasp and a sob. "If we're going to do this," Lena said, her voice steady, "despite everything, you tell me everything. No more secrets. No more protection through ignorance. I deserve to know what I am, what we're up against." His hand came up, covered hers. On one side, burning. On the other, freezing. In the middle, where their skin pressed together, something else entirely. 7 days, he said, opening his eyes. That's how long we have before he arrives. The hunter they sent. His name is Azrael, and he's never failed an execution. Kyle showed up at county. General exactly 12 hours later, at the start of Lena's night shift. She was checking vitals on a domestic violence case in Bay 4 when she felt him. Not saw. Felt. Like the air pressure had changed. Like walking into a walk-in freezer and a furnace simultaneously. Her hand stuttered on the blood pressure cuff, and Mrs. Chen, the 52-year-old woman with the bruised ribs and split lip, noticed. "You okay, honey?" Mrs. Chen asked, concern somehow finding space alongside her own pain. "Fine." Lena forced a smile, finished the reading, made a note to have the social worker swing by. She stepped into the hallway, and there he was, leaning against the vending machines like he belonged there. He looked worse than yesterday. The shadows under his eyes had deepened to bruises. His left side seemed to glow faintly even under the fluorescent lights, while his right absorbed illumination like a black hole. He wore a different shirt, long-sleeved despite the Texas heat, but she could see the edge of a fresh bandage peeking out at his wrist. "What are you doing here?" She kept her voice low, professional. Around them, the ER moved in its usual chaotic rhythm. Nobody looked twice at the man radiating impossible heat and cold in equal measure. "You said no more secrets." Cale pushed off the wall, moved closer. She smelled ozone and something darker, like earth after rain mixed with smoke. "That means you need to understand what you're up against. What you are. I can't explain. I have to show you. I'm working. Call in sick. I have patience. They'll survive one night without you." His gold eye caught hers. "You won't survive 7 more days without preparation. Your blood might heal wounds, Lena, but it won't stop a celestial blade through your heart." A nurse rushed past with a crash cart. Somewhere down the hall, a baby wailed. The normal sounds of County General's emergency department, the soundtrack to her life for 10 years. She'd built a routine here. A purpose. Night after night of saving strangers. As if enough saved lives could balance the scales against the family she'd lost. 2 hours, she heard herself say. "I'll tell them I'm sick. But you're buying me coffee. And you're answering every question I have." Something flickered across his divided face. Relief, maybe. Deal. 20 minutes later, they sat in a 24-hour diner 3 blocks from the hospital. The place was empty except for a trucker nursing coffee at the counter and a waitress who looked like she'd been on shift since the previous decade. Cale had chosen the corner booth, back to the wall, eyes on the door. Military habit, or something older. Lena wrapped her hands around her mug, grateful for the warmth. She'd been cold since touching him yesterday, a chill that seemed to have settled into her bones despite the summer heat. "Start talking." "Your great-grandmother's name was Elena Vasquez," Kyle began. His own coffee sat untouched, steam rising in strange patterns above the cup. 1893. She was dying of tuberculosis, watching her children waste away from the same disease. In desperation, she made a deal with a demon calling itself Marcosius. Her blood, and the blood of her descendants, in exchange for the power to heal. That's impossible. People don't live that long. My family wasn't that old. The demon changed her on a molecular level. Her children inherited the gift, diluted but present. Each generation, the healing ability. Passed down, sometimes skipping people entirely. Your mother had it weekly. Could never keep a houseplant alive, but somehow every pet your family owned lived twice as long as it should have. He paused. Your brother had none of it. But you got the concentrated version. Stronger than Elena herself. Lena's throat tightened at the mention of David. Why didn't my mother tell me? She didn't know. The original deal was erased from family memory as part of the contract. Only those who awakened the full gift would remember. You were supposed to awaken at puberty. Would have started getting flashes of Elena's memories, understanding what you could do. But I killed your family before that could happen, and your trauma locked everything down. Convenient timing, she said bitterly. Not timing. Orders. Kale's right hand flexed on the table, frost spreading across the laminate surface in delicate patterns. Every century or so, the Celestial Council does an audit. Finds humans. With demonic contracts in their bloodline, marks them for purification. Your family came up on the list. I was assigned the execution because I'd proven I could follow orders without question. 243 assignments before yours. I'd never hesitated. The frost patterns under his hand looked like wings. Lena traced them with her eyes, not touching. What changed? You touched the fire, and it obeyed you. His voice dropped lower. I stood in your burning room and I watched a 7-year-old child command flame like it was a trained dog. You didn't know what you were doing, didn't understand the power, but it responded anyway. And I realized the Celestials were wrong. Power isn't evil. It's what you choose to do with it that matters. Your great-grandmother made a desperate choice to save her children. You were using your gift instinctively to survive. Where was the evil in that? So, you let me live. I broke my oath. Nephilim served the Celestial Council as executioners because it's the only way we're allowed to exist. We're abominations, born from angels who fell and coupled with demons. We shouldn't be possible. The universe itself rejects us. He gestured to his divided body, the war between heat and cold playing out visibly on his skin. Every second of my existence is agony. The angel side wants to purge the demon. The demon side wants to corrupt the angel. They fight for dominance constantly, and I'm the battlefield. Lena watched his hands. The left one radiated warmth, fingers tapping a nervous rhythm. The right one had gone completely still, frost creeping up his wrist. The scars on your arms, the marks on your back, that's from the war inside you? Partially. The ones on my arms are tallies. Every execution I've carried out, I mark my skin. Penance. Reminder. So I never forget what I am. His jaw tightened. The burns on my back are from the council. Every year I report for judgment. They evaluate whether I'm still useful or whether the demon side has corrupted me too much. The burns are purification. Holy fire pressed to flesh. If I scream, I'm deemed too weak. If I don't, I'm deemed too far gone. I have to find the space between, every time. Nausea rolled through Lena's stomach. How many times? I've served for 250 years, so 250 burns. One for each year. They layer them over the old ones. There's not much original skin left on my back. She'd seen torture victims in the ER. Gang initiations, domestic abuse, human trafficking. But something about the clinical, ritualized nature of what he was describing made her skin crawl. And if you fail the judgment? Execution. They don't waste time with trials or appeals. Nephilim exist at the Council's mercy. We're tools, weapons. When we break, they dispose of us. The trucker at the counter paid and left. The waitress disappeared into the kitchen. They were alone now, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant clatter of dishes. Kale's mismatched eyes found hers across the table, and she saw something raw there. Something that made her understand why he'd broken his oath 10 years ago. "Tell me about the mate bond," she said quietly. His left hand clenched. Heat radiated from it so intensely that the coffee cup began to steam more violently. Nephilim don't get mates. We're not supposed to. We're sterile, isolated, incapable of forming the connections that make someone fully human. But sometimes, rarely, the universe makes a mistake. Assigns us a soul match anyway. It's considered a curse. Why? Because claiming a mate as a Nephilim is a death sentence for both parties. The Celestials see it as the demon side trying to corrupt a pure soul. They execute the Nephilim and purify the human. No exceptions. He met her eyes. I knew you were mine the second I walked into your burning house. Before I saw your face. Before I knew you were a child. The bond snapped into place like a chain around my chest. I was sent to kill you. And the universe decided you belonged to me. Lena's breath caught. That's why you couldn't do it. I spent 10 years trying to convince myself it was mercy. Weakness. A moment of misguided compassion. His voice scraped raw. But the truth is, I couldn't kill you because even then, even as a child, you were mine. And I'd rather face eternal torture than destroy my own soul. The words hung between them, heavy as stones. Lena thought about the connection she'd felt yesterday when she touched his face. The way her blood had healed him when it shouldn't have. The cold that had settled in her bones since meeting him. Like her body was trying to match his temperature. Find equilibrium in his war. What happens if we claim the bond fully? She asked. I mark you. Bite and blood exchange. Your DNA changes on a molecular level. You'd gain some of my abilities, my lifespan. You'd feel what I feel, know when I'm in danger, be able to find me. Anywhere. He leaned back, and she saw the strain in every line of his body. But the second I mark you, every celestial and demon in a 100-mile radius would sense it. We'd have hours, maybe days before they came for us. And when they did, they wouldn't just kill us. They'd make examples. Torture us publicly. Broadcast it to every supernatural community as a warning about what happens when abominations try to claim souls. So we can't. We can't, he agreed. But the way he looked at her said something different. Said he wanted to anyway. Consequences be damned. Lena's phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. 3-car pileup on I-35. Multiple incoming traumas. All hands on deck. She should go back. Should return to the familiar rhythm of blood and breaks and saves. Instead, she stayed in the booth, watching the man across from her wage war with himself. The hunter coming for me, she said. Azrael, tell me about him. Kale's expression went cold. Colder than his right side had ever been. He's what I would have become if I'd never hesitated. Perfect executioner. No mercy, no doubt, no humanity left. He's older than me by 500 years. Stronger, faster, and he's never let a target survive. Does he have a mate? He did, 300 years ago. He claimed her anyway, knowing what it would mean. When the council came, he killed her himself before they could. Proved his loyalty. They rewarded him with the position of High Executioner. Horror crawled up Lena's spine. He killed his own mate, to spare her from what they would have done. Kale's voice held no judgment, only exhausted understanding. I used to think he was a monster. Now I wonder if he was just practical. If love really is worth the price they make us pay. Lena reached across the table. Her hand hovered over his, not quite touching, feeling the war of temperature in the space between their skin. 7 days until he gets here. What do we do? I train you. Teach you to access your blood's full power. You'll need to be able to heal yourself, fight back, at least buy time to run. His eyes held hers. And I finish what I should have done 10 years ago. I complete my mission. I kill Elena Vasquez's last descendant. The words should have terrified her. Instead, Lena felt something else. A dark, twisted relief. You're going to fake my death. I'm going to make it real enough that no investigation can prove otherwise. Body, burn patterns, dental records, everything. You'll be dead on paper, erased from every supernatural registry. His hand finally moved, closed over hers. The burning cold made her gasp, but she didn't pull away. And then we run. New names, new city, new lives. Together. Because I'm selfish enough to want both of us to survive this, even if it means living as ghosts. That's your plan? Fake my death and disappear? That's the only plan that doesn't end with us dead or wishing we were. His thumb traced the scar on her palm, the one from the night her family died. Unless you have a better idea. Lena thought about her apartment, her job, the life she'd built from ash and grief. Thought about patients who needed her, the routine that kept her sane, the small ways she tried to balance scales that would never even. Then she thought about Azrael, the executioner who'd killed his own mate, about a future where she lived in fear, waiting for a blade in the dark. "Teach me to fight," she said. "And then we do this your way. We die on paper and live everywhere else." Cale's grip tightened. For the first time since she'd met him, both sides of his face showed the same expression. Hope, fragile and dangerous as new flame. "We start tomorrow night," he said. "After your shift. I know a place outside the city, abandoned warehouse. You're going to hate me before we're done. Training won't be gentle." "I already hate you," Lena said, but her hand stayed in his, accepting the burn and freeze of his touch. "You killed my family. No. No apology. No excuse. Just acknowledgement. But I'm going to make sure you survive. Even if you hate me forever, at least you'll be alive to feel it." She pulled her hand back, stood. Her palm tingled where they'd touched, warm and cold at once. "Tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Text me the address." "Lena." He stood too, and in the harsh diner lighting, she saw how much pain it cost him just to exist. Every breath a battle, every heartbeat a war. "Thank you. For not running. For giving me a chance to fix what I broke." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "If your plan doesn't work, if Azrael finds us, I'm not going down without taking something with me. Even if it's just the satisfaction of making you regret every second you've spent keeping me alive." His mismatched eyes held hers. "Fair enough." Lena walked out of the diner into the humid Texas night. Behind her, through the window, she saw Cale still standing by the booth. Steam rose from his left side, frost gathered on his right. And for just a moment, she let herself imagine what it would feel like to carry that kind of agony every second of every day for 250 years. Then she got in her car and drove back to the hospital, back to the blood and the saves, and the pretense that anything about her life was still normal. 6 days until Azrael arrived. 6 days to learn how to die convincingly enough to live. The warehouse smelled like rust and forgotten violence. Lena arrived at 10:07, exhausted from a shift that had included 2 stabbings, a cardiac arrest, and a teenager who'd wrapped his motorcycle around a telephone pole. She'd saved all of them. Felt that strange pull under her skin as her hands worked faster than training should allow, wounds closing under her touch in ways that made the other nurses whisper. Kyle was waiting in the center of the empty space, surrounded by symbols drawn in white chalk. They formed concentric circles, each filled with characters that made her eyes ache. If she looked too long, he'd stripped down to a tank top, and she saw the full landscape of scars covering his arms. Hundreds of thin white lines, layered so thick they formed texture. His divided temperature created visible distortion in the air around him. Heat shimmer on the left, cold vapor on the right. "You're late," he said without looking up. "I had patience." Lena dropped her bag by the door, surveyed the space. Broken windows high on the walls let in moonlight. Graffiti covered every surface except the floor where Kyle had drawn his circles. "What is all this?" "Protection sigils. If you lose control of your power during training, these will contain it. Keep the energy from alerting every supernatural creature within 50 miles. that there's a newly awakened healer bleeding magic into the atmosphere. He finally met her eyes. Tonight, we open the door your trauma locked shut. It's going to hurt. I'm an ER nurse. I know hurt. Not like this. He gestured to the center. Circle. Your great-grandmother's deal didn't just give your bloodline healing power. It gave you access to life force itself. You can heal because you can see the blueprint of what something should be and restore it to that pattern. But the gift goes both ways. You can also see how to unmake things, how to stop hearts, rupture organs, cause cells to forget how to divide correctly. Ice slid down Lena's spine. I would never. You will if Azrael backs you into a corner. Kale's voice held no judgment. The Celestials don't send executioners who can be reasoned with. When he comes, you'll have seconds to choose between using your power as a weapon or dying. I need to make sure you can make that choice. Lena stepped into the outer circle. The symbols seemed to pulse under her feet, warm and alive. How do we start? Blood. Kale produced a knife from somewhere, silver blade etched with more of those headache-inducing characters. Your power is locked behind the memory of the fire. We need to create a controlled trauma. Make your body remember what it felt like when your gift first manifested. Blood magic is the fastest route. You want me to cut myself? I want you to cut me. He held out his left arm, the one that radiated heat. Fresh scars crossed older ones, a history of pain written in flesh. Your blood healed me in the ER because I was dying and your instinct kicked in. Tonight we reverse it. You hurt me, and we see if you can unmake as easily as you make whole. Every medical instinct in Lena's body screamed against it. First, do no harm. The oath she'd taken, the principle she'd built her life around. There has to be another way. There isn't. Kale's mismatched eyes held hers, patient as stone. You think I haven't tried every method over 200 years? Blood calls to blood. Pain awakens power. Those are the only rules that matter in our world. She took the knife. It was heavier than she expected, cold despite Kale's proximity. The symbols on the blade seemed to move in her peripheral vision, sliding like mercury. If I do this, if I learn to hurt instead of heal, what does that make me? Alive. Simple. Final. It makes you alive when Azrael comes. Everything else is philosophy, and philosophy doesn't stop celestial blades. Lena pressed the knife to his forearm. Her hand shook. She'd cut into flesh 1,000 times in the ER, scalpel slicing through skin to access trauma beneath. But this was different. This was deliberate harm. With no medical purpose, no life-saving justification. Do it, Kale said quietly. I've survived worse. She drew the blade across his skin. Blood welled immediately, darker than it should be, moving sluggishly. The smell hit her, that strange mix of ozone and smoke she'd noticed before. His blood wasn't entirely human. Whatever he was, Nephilim, abomination, it showed in every cell. The wound should have started clotting. Instead, it gaped wider. She watched, horrified, as the edges curled back, like paper in flame. His left arm, the angel side, tried to heal. Golden light flickered under his skin, but his right arm, the demon side, fought it. Shadow seeped from the wound, thick as oil. Now touch it, Kale said. His voice was strained but steady. Put your hand over the cut and tell me what you feel. Lena pressed her palm to the wound. Heat from his angel side burned her skin. Cold from his demon side made her bones ache. But underneath she felt something else. Threads. Millions of them, invisible to the eye but tangible to some sense she didn't have a name for. They connected cells to cells, mapped the architecture of his body, showed her how everything fit together. And she understood. This was what her great-grandmother had bargained for. The ability to see life's blueprint and edit it like code. I feel you, she whispered. Your whole body. I can see where the angel and demon sides fight. where they've damaged tissue from years of war. I can see old wounds that never healed right, bones that set crooked. I can see everything. Good. Kale's breath came faster now. The wound was spreading, his dual nature fighting itself through the opening she'd created. Now push. Don't heal. Make it worse. Tell the cells to forget their shape. Tell the blood to stop carrying oxygen. Tell the flesh to unmake itself. I can't. I'm a healer. You're a survivor. His gold eye blazed. And survivors do what they must. Push, Lena. Hurt me. She closed her eyes and pushed. The threads under her palm responded like instruments she'd been born knowing how to play. She found the ones that governed healing and twisted them backward, told cells to divide incorrectly, told blood vessels to collapse, told flesh to forget it had ever been whole. Kale's scream tore through the warehouse. Lena jerked her hand back, horror flooding her veins. The wound had spread up his arm, tissue blackening as if necrosis had set in. But worse than that, she could see the damage continuing, spreading like infection, her power eating away at him from the inside. "Stop it," she gasped. "I don't know how to stop it." "Yes, you do." Kyle's voice came out ragged. Sweat poured down his face, steam rising from his left side, frost forming on his right. "The same way you started it. Feel for the threads and reverse what you did. Heal me before the damage reaches my heart." Her hand shook as she pressed them back to his arm. The threads were there, but they were tangled now, knotted by her. Clumsy attempt at destruction. She fumbled for them, trying to remember what they'd looked like before, how they'd been arranged. The necrosis climbed past his elbow. "Lena," his voice was fading. "I need you to focus. Remember what I looked like in the ER, how the wound closed under your touch. You knew how to heal then. Know it now." She remembered, his blood mixing with hers, the impossible knitting of flesh that had saved his life. She'd done it instinctively then, driven by the basic human. Need to stop suffering. She reached for that same instinct now, pushed past her horror at what she'd done, found the pattern of wholeness underneath the damage. The threads straightened under her touch. Cells remembered their proper shape. Blood vessels reopened. Flesh crawled back together, slow at first, then faster. Within seconds, his arm was whole again. Not even a scar remained to show where she'd cut him. Lena stumbled backward, out of the circle. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely stand. What the hell was that? That was you accessing 5% of your power. Kyle flexed his healed arm, testing the restored muscle. In the ER, you were working on instinct, barely scratching the surface. Tonight, you went deeper. Touched the source directly. If you'd pushed just a little harder, you could have stopped my heart from across the room without laying a hand on me. I never want to do that again. You'll do it 6 more times tonight. He picked up the knife, held it, out to her. Once for each day we have left. By the time Azrael arrives, you'll be able to kill with a thought, or save someone who's already flatlined. Both skills use the same power. You just have to choose which direction to push. Lena stared at the blade, at her hands, which had just unmade flesh like it was nothing, at the man in front of her who'd survived 250 years of torture and was asking her to hurt him again because it was the only way to keep her alive. "Why are you doing this?" The question came out broken. You could run, disappear. Let Azrael kill me and be done with your failure. Why risk everything to save someone who hates you? Kyle's expression softened. Just slightly, just for a moment, but she saw it. The human underneath the monster. Because I've spent 250 years being a perfect weapon, following orders, killing without question. And the one time I chose mercy over duty, the one time I let my humanity win, it was for you. Maybe I'm doing this because you're my mate. Maybe I'm doing it because I'm selfish and want you to survive. Or maybe, he paused, maybe I'm doing it because if you die now, It means every terrible thing I've done in service to the Celestials was for nothing. You're my one good choice, Lena. The only time I chose right. I need you to live so I can believe I'm still capable of being more than what they made me." The words hung in the stale warehouse air. Outside, Dallas hummed with life, oblivious to the magic and horror unfolding in this forgotten space. Lena thought about her family, burning, about a 7-year-old child touching flame and making it obey, about 10 years spent healing strangers because she couldn't heal herself. She took the knife. "Again," she said. "Teach me to hurt. Teach me to kill. And when Azrael comes, I'll make him regret they ever sent him after us." Something flickered across Kyle's face. Pride, maybe. Or fear at what he was creating. "This time, I want you to go deeper. Don't just damage the surface. Find my heart. Learn what it feels like to hold someone's life in your hands and choose whether they keep breathing. That could kill you. It won't. You'll stop before it gets that far. You're a healer, Lena. It's in your bones. You'll know exactly how far you can push before the damage becomes irreversible." He stepped back into the center circle. "And when you do this to Azrael, you won't stop. You'll push until his heart forgets how to beat and his lungs forget how to draw air. You'll unmake him cell by cell if that's what it takes." Lena raised the knife. "And if I can't? If when the moment comes, I freeze because I'm too much of a healer to be a killer?" Kale met her eyes. "Then we both die. And at least we'll die knowing we tried." She cut him again, this time on the chest, directly over his heart. The blade sank deeper than before, and she felt it. The pull of his life force, the threads that kept him alive and fighting. And suffering. She wrapped her awareness around his heart, felt it beating its divided rhythm, angel side and demon side, pumping blood in competing patterns that somehow found harmony. And she pushed. His heart stuttered, skipped a beat. Then two. She felt the panic in his cells, the confusion as they received contradictory signals. "Die," she told them. "Forget your purpose. Stop." Kale collapsed to his knees. Blood poured from the chest wound, black and gold mixing, his dual nature visible even in his veins. His mismatched eyes found hers, and in them she saw trust. Absolute, terrifying trust that she would know when to stop. Lena held his dying heart in her invisible grip and understood what Kale had been trying to teach her. Power wasn't about strength. It was about choice. Every second she chose whether to heal or harm, whether to save or destroy, whether to be the nurse who'd spent 10 years fixing broken bodies, or the weapon who would do whatever it took to survive. She chose survival. Then, at the last possible second, she chose mercy. His heart restarted under her touch. The wound closed. Kyle gasped air back into his lungs, alive because she'd decided he should be. Again, he rasped when he could speak. 4 more times tonight, and tomorrow we do it all over. By the time Azrael arrives, this needs to be as natural as breathing. Lena raised the knife for the 3rd time. Her hands no longer shook. The horror had burned away, replaced by something colder. More practical. More dangerous. "Tell me about him," she said as she cut. "Tell me everything about the man I'm going to have to kill." And Kale, bleeding in his protective circle, taught her how to become a monster to survive the monsters. On the 4th night of training, Lena killed Kale. Not permanently. Not intentionally. But for 43 seconds, his heart didn't beat, and his lungs didn't draw air, and his mismatched eyes stared at nothing while she screamed and poured every ounce of her power into restarting what she'd stopped. When he gasped back to life, the first thing he said was, "Good, now you know what it feels like." They were in the warehouse again, both of them covered in his blood. Lena had learned to cut with precision now, opening arteries and closing them, stopping organs and restarting them, pushing her power deeper each night until she could feel every cell in his body like notes in a song she was learning to conduct. But tonight she'd pushed too far, told his heart, To stop and forgotten, for just a moment, how to tell it to start again. Panic had made her clumsy, and those 43 seconds had felt like drowning in ice water while the world burned around her. That wasn't good, Lena said. Her voice shook. That was me losing control. That was you learning your limits. Cale sat up slowly, steam and frost still warring across his skin. Azrael won't give you time to be careful. He'll force you into exactly that kind of panic, make you desperate enough to fumble. Now you know what it feels like to go too far. You'll recognize it faster next time. There can't be a next time. I felt you die, Cale. I felt your consciousness slip away. Another few seconds and I wouldn't have been able to bring you back. I know. He stood, crossed to where she sat against the wall, and lowered himself beside her. The heat and cold radiating from him should have been uncomfortable. But after 4 nights, her body had started adjusting, craving it even. Like she was becoming addicted to his impossible temperature. That's why tomorrow we switch. I teach you to defend instead of attack. Lena's hands were still shaking. She pressed them flat against the concrete floor, trying to ground herself. I don't want to do this anymore. Any of this. I want to go back to before, when I was just a nurse who got lucky with patients and the worst thing I had to worry about was paying rent. You can't. Cale's voice was gentle, gentler than she'd ever heard it. The door's open now. Your power is awake. Even if you ran, even if I disappeared and you never saw me again, you'd still feel it. Every patient you touch, you'd know you could save them or kill them with equal ease. That knowledge doesn't go back to sleep. He was right. She'd felt it during her shift tonight, before coming to the warehouse. A teenager had coded on her table, heart stopped from the fentanyl laced through the heroin he'd injected. She'd started compressions automatically, but underneath, she'd felt the threads. Known she could restart his heart without the paddles, without the epinephrine, just by wanting it hard enough. She'd used the defibrillator anyway. Let the machines do the work, afraid of what it would mean if she saved him with power instead of protocol. 3 more days, Cale said. Then we stage your death and disappear. You'll never have to use this power again if you don't want to. We'll find somewhere remote, somewhere the Celestials don't monitor. You can go back to being a nurse under a different name. I'll find work that doesn't involve killing. We'll build something normal. Nothing about this is normal. But even as she said it, Lena felt the pull. The mate bond Cale had mentioned, growing stronger every night they spent together. She could feel him now even when they weren't touching. Knew when his angel side was winning the internal war, because her left side would warm. Knew when his demon side surged because cold would crawl up her right arm. Tell me what normal looks like to you, Cale said, before the fire. What did you want to be when you grew up? The question caught her off guard. Nobody had asked her that in 10 years. After the fire, after the hospital and the foster homes and the social workers, everyone had treated her like a tragedy in motion. Poor orphaned girl, traumatized child. The future became about survival, not dreams. A teacher, she said quietly. Elementary school. I wanted to be like Mrs. Patterson, my 2nd grade teacher. She made everything feel safe. Like no matter what was happening outside the classroom, for those 6 hours we were protected. After David died, after my parents, her throat closed. I wanted to make other kids feel that safe. Cale's expression shifted. Something painful moved across his divided face. You would have been good at that. Would have been. Past tense. That girl died in the fire with her family. Lena pulled her knees to her chest. The person I am, now, she only knows how to hold people together while they're breaking. Keep them alive long enough to fix them. I'm not safe, Cale. I'm the thing that shows up when safety has already failed. You saved me. I killed you tonight. For 43 seconds, I stopped your heart because I got scared and lost control. And then you brought me back. His hand reached out, hovered near hers without touching. You chose to save me. Even panicking, even terrified, you chose life over death. That's who you are. Not the power, the choice. Lena looked at his hand, suspended in the air between them. She'd spent 4 nights cutting him open, unmaking him cell by cell, learning the geography of his pain. She knew his body better than she knew her own now. Knew where the angel side was strongest, where the demon side fought hardest, where the war between them caused the most damage. She knew he was lying about building something normal. Nephilim didn't get normal. They got borrowed time between executions. "Tell me about her," Lena said. "Azrael's mate, the one he killed." Kael's hand fell. "Why?" "Because I need to understand what we're up against. What kind of man kills his own mate to prove loyalty?" For a long moment, Kael didn't answer. Then slowly he began to speak. Her name was Seraphine, human, like you. No special bloodline, no demonic contracts. Just a woman who worked in a bookshop in Paris in 1724. Azrael had been hunting a demon who'd been possessing children. The demon used Seraphine's bookshop as a meeting place. Azrael went in to investigate and recognized her as his mate. Immediately, he tried to stay away, completed his mission, killed the demon, reported back to the council. But the bond was already forming. He'd see her in crowds, hear her voice in his thoughts. The universe had decided they belonged together, and the universe doesn't take no for an answer. Lena's chest tightened. What happened? He went back, spent 3 months courting her like a normal man. She fell in love with him, not knowing what he was. He told himself he'd keep her safe, that he'd be careful, that somehow they could make it work. Kael's voice went flat. The council found out. They always find out. They gave him a choice. Kill her and remain in their service, or refuse, and they'd execute both of them anyway. But slowly, publicly, as a lesson to other Nephilim about the cost of attachment. That's not a choice. That's an execution with extra steps. That's how they maintain control. Kael met her eyes. Azrael chose the quick death, went to Seraphine's bookshop, told her what he was, what she was to him, what the council had ordered. Then he put his blade through her heart before she could fully process the truth. She died confused and heartbroken, and he died inside while his body kept breathing. Tears burned Lena's eyes. How could he? Because he loved her enough to spare her from what the council would have done. They don't just kill mates of Nephilim, Lena. They make it last. Days of torture, broadcast to every supernatural community as entertainment and warning. Azrael gave Seraphine a merciful death instead of that, and then kept serving the people who forced that choice. What else could he do? Desert, and they'd hunt him for eternity. Die and accomplish nothing. At least staying gave his suffering purpose. Every execution he carries out is for her. Penance. Proof that her death wasn't meaningless. Lena thought about the man heading toward them. The executioner who'd loved his mate enough to kill her quickly. Who'd spent 300 years being the perfect weapon to justify that terrible mercy. He won't hesitate with me. Won't give us a chance to talk or negotiate. No. The second he finds you, he'll strike. Fast, clean, efficient. If I'm there, he'll go through me first. He knows I'm compromised, that you're my mate. He'll see killing me as another mercy, sparing me from the choice he had to make. We need to separate. The words came out before Lena fully thought them through. When he comes, you can't be with me. If he kills you to get to me, then my death means nothing. We both die, and it's all for nothing. I'm not leaving you to face him alone. You are. Lena turned to face him fully. Because if we're together, he has leverage. He can hurt you to get to me, force me to make terrible choices. But if I'm alone, if you're already gone, then my death is just my death. Quick, like he gave Seraphine. Kael's mismatched eyes blazed. No? Absolutely not. We planned this together. We fake your death together. I'm not abandoning you two. You're not abandoning me. You're giving me a chance." Lena grabbed his hand, the one radiating heat, pressed it against her chest where her heart hammered. "If you're with me, I'll try to protect you. I'll make mistakes because I'm scared of losing you. But if I know you're already safe, already gone, I can focus everything on surviving. Lena, I killed you tonight, Kale. For 43 seconds, I stopped your heart. And in those 43 seconds, I wasn't thinking about Azrael or the Celestials, or anything except getting you back. That's what will happen if you're with me when he arrives. I'll choose you over my own survival, and we'll both die." His fingers curled against her chest, burning and desperate. "I can't lose you. Not after everything. You won't lose me. I'll find you after. New name, new city. Just like we planned. But I need to face Azrael alone. It's the only way this works." They sat in silence, his hand over her heart, her pulse beating against his palm. Outside, dawn was breaking. They'd trained through the night again. In 72 hours, give or take, Azrael would arrive, and every plan they'd made would either save them or get them both killed. "One condition," Kyle finally said. "I leave physically, but the mate bond stays open. Whatever happens, I'll feel it. If you're dying, if Azrael is too much, I'll know, and I'll come back. If you come back, you die. Then I die. Simple. Final. But I won't sit safe somewhere while you're executed. I'd rather face the Council's torture than live knowing I abandoned my mate to save myself." Lena wanted to argue, wanted to make him promise to stay away no matter what. But she saw the truth in his divided face. This wasn't negotiable. Kyle had spent 250 years following orders, being the perfect weapon. The one time he'd chosen mercy over duty had been for her. He wouldn't choose self-preservation now. "Okay," she whispered. "Keep the bond open, but promise me you'll wait. Give me time to try my way first." "I promise I'll try." The distinction wasn't lost on either of them. Kyle stood, pulled her to her feet. "2 more nights of training. Tomorrow I teach you to shield, how to hide your power from supernatural senses so Azrael can't track you before you're ready. And the night after," he paused. "The night after, we rehearse your death. I need to know you can sell it convincingly enough that no investigation will prove otherwise." "You mean you need to practice killing your mate?" His jaw tightened. "Yes." Lena touched his face, palm covering the line where heat met cold. Through the mate bond growing stronger every day, she felt his anguish. The war inside him wasn't just angel versus demon. It was duty versus love, pragmatism versus hope, survival versus the terrible price. Survival demanded. "When this is over," she said quietly, "when we're safe and living under new names in some town that doesn't know what we are, I need you to tell me about all of them. Every person you've executed in 250 years. Their names, their crimes, what they said before you killed them. I need to know exactly who I'm choosing to save. That will take years. Then we'll have years." She dropped her hand. "Or we'll have nothing. Either way, I want to know what I'm dying to protect." Kale studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. 243 names. I remember every single one. Their faces, their last words, the exact moment their light went out. When we're safe, I'll tell you all of it. And you can decide if the man you saved was worth saving. Dawn light filtered through the broken warehouse windows. Somewhere in the world, Azrael was traveling toward them. 3 days left. 72 hours to prepare for an executioner who'd never failed a mission, who'd killed his own mate to prove loyalty, who would see Kale and Lena as the mercy killing he'd been denied. "Let's go," Lena said. "I have a shift in 3 hours, and tonight, you teach me to hide." They walked out of the warehouse together, his heat and her newfound cold finding balance in the space between them. Above, The sky was turning pink and gold, beautiful and oblivious. 3 more days until the monster arrived. 3 more days to learn how to become monsters themselves. The dream came like it always did, wrapped in smoke and screaming. Lena was 7 years old again, pressed into the corner of her bedroom while fire consumed everything. But this time, she wasn't alone. Kyle stood in the doorway, younger somehow, his mismatched eyes bright with something she recognized now as horror. His blade dripped with blood that looked black in the firelight. "I'm sorry," he said. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her to burn. She woke gasping in. Her apartment at 4 p.m., 2 hours before her shift started. Sweat soaked her sheets despite the air conditioning. Her palms burned like they had that night. Phantom pain from scars a decade old. Through the mate bond, she felt Kale somewhere across the city. Awake. Waiting. Feeling her nightmare through their connection. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Tonight we shield. Come early. We don't have time for you to be afraid anymore." Lena stared at the message. He was right. She'd been having the nightmare every night since training started, each time more vivid than the last. Her power awakening had unlocked the memories her trauma had buried. She saw her mother's face now, twisted in agony, heard David's screams as he tried to reach her room, smelled her father's burning flesh, and every time, she saw Kyle, young and horrified and walking away. She should hate him more, should want him dead with every breath. Instead, she felt the pull of the bond growing. Stronger, her body adjusting to match his temperature, her power syncing with his in ways that terrified her. They were becoming something together, something that shouldn't exist. Lena arrived at the warehouse at 8 p.m. instead of 10. Kyle was already there, shirtless, steam rising from his left side while frost gathered on his right. The scars on his back were visible in the lamplight he'd set up. Hundreds of circular burns layered so thick she couldn't see healthy skin underneath. Each one, a year of service. Each one a test he'd survived by finding the space between weakness and corruption. "You saw it again," he said without turning around. "The fire. Every night now." She dropped her bag. "I remember everything. David trying to break through his door. My mother calling for my father. The sound my father made when..." Her voice cracked. "When I cut his throat." Kyle finally turned. His expression held no excuses. Quick death. Mercy by celestial standards. Not that it makes any difference to you. No, it doesn't. Lena crossed to the center circle. "Teach me to shield. I want the nightmares out of my head. Shielding won't stop the memories. It'll just hide your power from supernatural senses. But maybe that's what you need right now. Something you can control when everything else is chaos." He gestured to a new set of symbols he'd drawn around the outer edge of the circle. Shielding is the opposite of projecting. Instead of pushing your power outward, you pull it inward. Compress it so tight that nothing can detect it. Not demons, not angels, not even other Nephilim. How long does it take to learn? Normally? Years. You have... He checked his watch. Approximately 48 hours until Azrael arrives. So we're going to cheat. Use the mate bond to jumpstart your shielding by borrowing mine. Lena's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means I'm going to mark you. Not fully. Not the claiming bite that changes your DNA and alerts every supernatural within 100 miles. Just enough to strengthen the bond. Let my power flow into yours. You'll be able to feel how I shield and replicate it. His jaw tensed. It'll hurt. And it'll make the bond almost impossible to break. Once we do this, you'll feel everything I feel. My pain becomes your pain. My death becomes... Don't. She held up a hand. We've been over this. You're not dying for me. And you're not dying for some cosmic mistake that assigned you as mate to a monster. His mismatched eyes blazed. This is the only way you learn to shield fast enough. But you need to understand what you're agreeing to. Partial marking isn't like touching or feeling vague emotions through the bond. It's intimate, invasive. You'll know things about me I've never told anyone. See memories I've buried. Feel the full weight of the war inside me every second. Will it go both ways? He hesitated. Yes. I'll feel everything you feel. See your memories. Know your thoughts. There won't be secrets between us anymore. Lena thought about the nightmares, about David's face in the fire, about 10 years of grief she'd never fully processed because processing meant breaking and she couldn't afford to break. Kyle would see all of it, would know exactly how much damage he'd done the night he chose mercy over duty. Do it, she said. Lena, do it before I lose my nerve. She crossed to him, tilted her head to expose her throat. You said 48 hours. We don't have time for me. To be afraid. Kale's hand came up, cupped her jaw with burning cold fingers. Through their existing bond, she felt his conflict. The angel side screaming that marking her, even partially, was corruption. The demon side hungry for the connection, wanting to bind her completely. And underneath both, the human part of him that had survived 250 years of torture, terrified of causing her more pain. It's okay, she whispered. I'm choosing this. His breath was hot against her. Neck, cold against her collarbone. The war of his temperature focused on the spot where he would bite. Tell me to stop and I will. Any point, any second, you say stop and I pull back. I won't say stop. His teeth pierced her skin. Pain exploded through her nervous system, but it wasn't just physical. The bite created a channel between them, and through that channel flooded 250 years of agony. She felt every execution he'd carried out, every burn the council had pressed to. His back, every second of the war between angel and demon tearing him apart from the inside. The sheer weight of his suffering drove her to her knees. Kale went down with her, teeth still locked in her throat, his power pouring into her in waves that alternated between burning and freezing. She felt his horror at what he was doing, his desperate hope that this would save her, his guilt over every life he'd taken, including her family. And underneath it all, she felt love. Obsessive, desperate, completely irrational love for a woman he'd known as a terrified child and encountered again as a stranger in an ER. Love that had survived 10 years of trying to convince himself it was just the mate bond, just biology, not real. Love that made him willing to face eternal torture if it meant she survived. Then her own memories flooded back through the connection into him. The fire consuming her house. Her mother's face melting. David's door splintering as he tried to reach her. The moment she'd touched the flames and felt them obey. The confusion and terror of waking in a hospital with no family and no memory. 10 years of night shifts and loneliness, and saving strangers to fill the void where her loved ones should have been. The knowledge that some part of her had always known she was different. Broken. Marked by something she didn't understand. Kale pulled back with a gasp. Blood stained his lips, black and red mixed together. Her humanity in his mouth. The bite mark on her throat. Burned like frostbite and fever at once. She touched it. Felt power pulsing under her skin. Foreign and familiar simultaneously. I see you, he said hoarsely. All of you. The girl who touched fire. The woman who saves everyone except herself. The parts you hide from the world because you're afraid if people see how broken you are, they'll leave like everyone else. I see you too. Lena's voice shook. The boy who became a weapon to survive. The man who marks his skin every time he kills. Because he refuses to forget what he is. The parts that are still human, buried under 250 years of horror. Tears streamed down her face. You really loved her. Seraphine. I can feel it. You understood why Azrael killed her, because you would have made the same choice if the council had found us then. I still might have to make it. His hands cupped her face, burning and freezing. If Azrael gets past your defenses, if he's going to take you slowly, I'll give you the quick death. Lena, like he gave her. I love you too much to let the council make you suffer." "I know." And she did. Could feel it through the bond now, crystal clear. His willingness to kill her rather than let her be tortured. His hope that it wouldn't come to that. His certainty that either way, he wouldn't survive her death by more than seconds. But I'm not Seraphine. I'm not going to die confused and heartbroken. If you put a blade through my heart, I'll understand why. And I'll forgive you for it. Kale's control shattered. He pulled her against him, his body a war zone of temperature that should have burned or frozen her, but instead felt like coming home. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the scarred landscape of his back, each burn a year of survival, and let herself cry for the first time since the fire. They stayed like that, while the mate bond settled into its new depth. Lena felt his power flowing into her, showing her how he compressed his supernatural signature until nothing could detect it. It was like breathing in reverse, pulling everything inward, making herself smaller and smaller until she was just human-shaped emptiness. She tried it, felt her power, bright and enormous since awakening, pull back, compress, hide. Within seconds, the warehouse felt different, lighter, like a pressure she hadn't known was there had lifted. "You're shielded," Kale said against her hair. "Perfect on the first try. Azrael won't be able to sense you until he's within visual range. Maybe not even then if you're careful. I can feel how you do it." Lena pulled back slightly. "It's like holding your breath. Natural now that I know the shape of it. That's the partial mark. You're borrowing my instincts, my muscle memory." His thumb traced the bite mark on her throat. "This won't fade, not completely. There'll always be a scar. 2 puncture wounds, one burned, one frozen. Anyone who knows what to look for will see it and know you belong to a Nephilim." "Good. Let them see." She met his mismatched eyes. "I spent 10 years trying to be invisible, normal, just another nurse in another hospital. I'm done hiding what I am. What you are will get you killed. What I am will keep me alive long enough to see you on the other side of this." She touched his face, feeling through the bond how much the partial marking had cost him. The angel side was screaming, calling him corrupted, demanding purification. The demon side was roaring victory, wanting to complete the mark, make the bond permanent. "I feel your war now, every second. How do you survive it?" "I don't. I just endure." He closed his eyes. 250 years of enduring. Some days I don't know which side is winning. Some days I don't care. I just exist in the space between. Too corrupt for heaven and too human for hell. Through the bond, Lena felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Fragile and desperate, but there. Hope that maybe with her, he could be more than the space between. Could be. Something whole. "Teach me the rest," she said. "Everything I need to know. How to fake my death convincingly. Where to run. How to find you after. All of it." Kale opened his eyes. "Once I teach you this, there's no going back. You'll know how to kill yourself in a way that looks real enough to fool celestial investigation. If something goes wrong, if Azrael gets to you before you're ready, you'll have the option to do it yourself. Quick death before he can make it slow. I understand. Do you?" His grip on her tightened. "I'm teaching you how to commit suicide, Lena. Giving you the tools to take yourself out if survival isn't possible. Can you really tell me you're ready for that?" She thought about David, about her parents, about 10 years of wondering why she'd survived when they hadn't, about nights when the guilt got so heavy she'd stood on her apartment balcony and looked down 6 floors and thought about how easy it would be to just stop. "I've been ready since I was 7 years old," she said quietly. "The only difference is now I have a reason to survive instead." Kyle studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. We start with the body. Azrael will need physical proof of your death. Not just blood or DNA. Actual remains. So we're going to create a corpse." "How?" "Your power can heal, can kill. But it can also transform. Change living tissue into something else. The same way you could stop a heart or heal a wound, you can convince cells they're already dead. Make them mimic post-mortem changes. Rigor mortis, liver mortis, algor mortis, all the stages of death accelerated. Lena's stomach churned. On myself? On test subjects first. I've been collecting bodies, criminals, suicides, people who died with no family, no one to claim them. We'll use them to practice. You'll learn to fake every stage of death until you can do it blindfolded. Then, when Azrael finds you, you'll have seconds to convince him you're already dead. Make your heart stop, your body temperature drop, your skin take on the pallor of a corpse. You'll essentially die, but keep enough brain activity to revive yourself once he's gone. That's insane. That's survival. He stood, pulled her to her feet. Come on. The first body is in the back room. Female, mid-20s, overdose. She's been dead 12 hours. I want you to examine her. Memorize what real death looks like. Then I want you to bring her back. I can't resurrect the dead. She's only been gone 12 hours. Brain tissue hasn't started significant decay. Her cells still remember being alive. You're not resurrecting. You're just convincing her body to reverse course, reminding it how to function. His expression was grim. If you can bring back someone who's been dead 12 hours, you can bring yourself back from a death that lasted seconds. That's the goal. Lena followed him to the back room. The body lay on a makeshift table, covered with a sheet. Young woman, like Cale had said. Blonde hair. Needle marks on her arms. Someone's daughter who'd made bad choices or gotten unlucky or both. Someone who'd died alone and unwanted. Someone Lena was about to use as practice. I can't do this, she whispered. You can. You have to. Cale's hand on her shoulder was burning cold. Because in 48 hours, you'll be that body, and I need to know you can come back. Lena pulled back the sheet. The woman's eyes were half open, clouded with death. Her skin had taken on a waxy quality, lips blue, fingers curled slightly. Real death. Permanent and undeniable. Except it wasn't. Not yet. Not if Lena was strong enough. She placed her hands on the woman's chest and reached for the threads. The woman's name had been Jessica Torres, and Lena brought her back at 3:47 a.m. For 6 minutes, Jessica breathed. Her heart beat. Her eyes focused and unfocused. Consciousness swimming somewhere between alive and gone. She didn't speak. Didn't seem to understand where she was or what was happening. Just existed in that liminal space while Lena held the threads of her life together through sheer force of will. Then Lena let go, and Jessica died again. Permanently this time. Cale had been right. Reversing death that recent wasn't resurrection. It was just persuading cells they weren't finished yet. Reminding a heart it knew how to beat. Lungs they knew how to expand. Neurons they knew how to fire. For 6 minutes, Lena had been God, and the power had felt like drowning and flying simultaneously. Again, Cale said. He'd brought 3 more bodies. This one's been dead 18 hours. Harder. But you need to know your limits. They worked through the night. Each body took longer to revive and stayed alive for less time. The 18-hour corpse lasted 4 minutes. The 22-hour corpse lasted 90 seconds. The 26-hour corpse didn't come back at all, no matter how hard Lena pushed. There was a window, apparently. A point where death became too permanent even for her power to reverse. By dawn, Lena was shaking with exhaustion and something darker. She'd held 4 dead strangers in that space between gone and alive, felt their cells remember and forget what it meant to exist. Part of her would carry them forever now, their last moments, their confusion, the way their bodies had given up fighting. Enough, Cale said, catching her as her legs gave out. You've learned what you needed to. Your death can't be more than a few hours old, or you won't be able to reverse it. Which means Azrael has to find you quickly. Has to believe you just died, not that you've been dead for days. How do we guarantee that? Lena's voice came out hollow. Through the partial mark, she felt Cale's exhaustion mirroring hers. He hadn't slept either, had spent the night watching her dance with death, feeling every moment through their bond. We bait him. Make sure he knows exactly where you are. Cale helped her to the makeshift cot in the corner. I'll leave a trail he can't ignore. Blood, power signature, everything pointing to you being alone and vulnerable in a specific location. He'll come fast because executioners don't waste time. The longer a target lives, the more chance they have to run or fight back. Lena lay down, every muscle screaming. Where? The place it started, your family's house on Maple Street. Ice flooded her veins. That house burned down 10 years ago. The lot's still there, empty, condemned. Nobody goes near it because the land is considered cursed by the local supernatural community. Too much death, too much fire. It's perfect. Azrael will expect you to avoid it, which means he won't be watching it as closely. And there's symmetry. You die where your family died. Poetic enough that the Celestials will buy it without too many questions. You want me to stage my death at the place where you killed my family. The words came out flat, emotionless, because if she let herself feel anything, she'd break. I know what I'm asking. Cale's hand found hers in the dim light. I know how much it'll cost you to go back there, but it's the only location that makes sense. Anywhere else, and Azrael will question why. Why that alley? Why that building? But your family home? That's the place a desperate woman would run when she had nowhere else to go. It's believable. Through the bond, Lena felt his guilt. Raw and corroding. He'd carried it for 10 years. That moment of choosing mercy over duty. Now he was asking her to return to the scene of his crime and use it as the stage for her own death. The cruelty of it wasn't lost on either of them. When? She asked. Tomorrow night, 36 hours from now. I'll go to ground at dawn, make it look like I've abandoned you. Azrael will track me first, realize I've fled, then turn his attention to finding you. You'll have maybe 6 hours between when he arrives in Dallas and when he finds you at the house. That's your window to prepare. And if he finds me before I'm ready, then you run. Shield your power, get as far away as possible, and pray he loses your trail. Cale's grip tightened. But he won't. Azrael doesn't lose trails, which is why you need to be ready at the house when he arrives. Control the encounter. Make him think he's found you vulnerable when really, you're prepared. Lena closed her eyes. Through the partial mark, she could feel Cale's heart beating its divided rhythm. Angel side and demon side in constant war. She'd learned to distinguish between them now. The angel side felt like sunlight and obligation, and rules written in stone. The demon side felt like shadow and hunger and freedom that came with terrible cost. Neither side was evil. Neither side was good. They just were, forever at war, forever tearing him apart. I need you to tell me, she said quietly, what they looked like, my family, when you killed them. Cale went still. Lena, you see them in my memories now, through the bond. But I was 7 and traumatized. My memories are fractured, unreliable. You were there as an adult, clear-headed. I need to know what really happened. All of it. No mercy, no sparing my feelings. Just truth. For a long moment, Cale didn't speak. Then slowly he began. Your father was in the kitchen. I came through the back door. He turned, saw me, and knew immediately what I was. Sensitives always know. He didn't run, didn't beg, just asked me to make it quick and spare his family. I told him I couldn't. He tried to fight anyway, lasted 11 seconds before I cut his throat. Lena's chest constricted, but she didn't stop him. Couldn't. This was penance for both of them. Your mother was upstairs, heard your father fall, came running down with a baseball bat, David's bat, aluminum, dented on one end from where he'd hit his only home run 3 weeks before. Cale's voice stayed steady, clinical, but through the bond, Lena felt his agony. She swung at me, connected with my ribs, broke. 3 of them. I admired that. She was defending her children against a monster, and she fought like she had a chance. I gave her a faster death than protocol required. Single stab to the heart. She was dead before she hit the ground. Tears streamed down Lena's face, but she didn't make a sound. David was hardest. 17 years old, should have been worrying about college applications and prom dates. Instead, he heard his parents die and locked himself in his room. Started piling furniture against the door. I could have broken through in seconds, but I gave him time. Let him think he was protecting you. When I finally entered, he was standing between his door and yours with a kitchen knife. Biggest one from the block. Told me if I wanted his baby sister, I'd have to go through him first. Did he fight? Lena's voice broke. Like a warrior. Got in 2 good cuts before I disarmed him. One across my face, one through my left hand. I still have the scars. Cale's free hand came up. Traced a line along his jaw that she'd noticed before but never questioned. He made me work for it. Made me earn the execution. When I finally put the blade through his heart, his last words were, "Run, Lena." He thought you could hear him. Thought he was buying you time to escape. He was. The words came out strangled. I heard him. Heard him tell me to run. But I was 7 and terrified and I couldn't move. I know. I could see you through the crack in your door. Pressed into the corner. Hands over your ears. The fire was spreading by then. I'd used celestial flame to make sure the evidence would be thoroughly destroyed. But you'd touched it somehow. Made a safe circle where the fire wouldn't go. I stood in your doorway with David's blood on my blade and I saw... What? Lena opened her eyes, met his mismatched gaze. What did you see? Myself. My own death. Not literally. But I understood in that moment that if I killed you, I'd lose the last piece of my humanity. Everything. That made me more than just a weapon would die with you. The angel side was screaming to complete the mission. The demon side was screaming to claim you as future mate. And the human part, the tiny fragment that remembered being born and loving and hoping, that part begged me to choose mercy. So you walked away. I erased your memory first. Couldn't leave you with the trauma of watching me murder your family. Used a technique the Celestials taught us for cleaning up witnesses. Pressed my hand to your forehead and pulled the night from your mind. You went limp, unconscious. I carried you outside, laid you on the lawn far enough from the flames that the firefighters would find you. Then I walked away and spent the next 10 years trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. Did you? Lena asked. Make the right choice? I don't know. Honest. Painful. I saved your life. Condemned myself to being hunted. Set in motion everything that's happening now. If I'd just followed. Orders. Completed the execution. Your family would still be gone, but you'd be at peace with them. No nightmares. No training to become a killer. No Azrael coming to finish what I started. Maybe mercy was the cruelest thing I could have done. Through the bond, Lena felt the question he wasn't asking. Do you wish I'd killed you then? Would quick death at 7 have been kinder than 28 years of grief and loneliness and learning to survive? She thought about it. Really thought. About David's laugh. Her mother's hands braiding her hair. Her father reading bedtime stories in different voices. Everything she'd lost. Then she thought about 10 years of saving lives in the ER. Patients who'd survived because she'd been there. Jessica Torres, dead from overdose, who Lena had brought back for 6 minutes of life. Not salvation. Just 6 more minutes of existing. Maybe that's all any of them were doing. Buying 6 more minutes. And maybe that was enough. I wish you'd made a different choice 10 years ago, Lena said quietly. I wish you'd refused the mission. Walked away before it started. Let my family live and damn the consequences. But you didn't. You killed them, and then you saved me. And now we're here. I can't change the past. Can't forgive what you did, because forgiveness would be dishonoring their deaths. But I can choose to survive anyway. To make their deaths mean something, by refusing to let the Celestials take me too. That's not forgiveness. No, it's not. It's something harder. It's acceptance that the world is cruel and unfair, and sometimes the person who destroys your life is also the person who saves it. It's living with contradictions, because the alternative is giving up. She sat up, faced him fully. You asked me what normal looks like. Before the fire, I wanted to be a teacher, make kids feel safe. That girl died with her family. But maybe there's another version. Maybe after this is over, after we disappear and build new lives, I can find a different way to help people. Use my power to heal instead of kill. Be what my great-grandmother should have been if the demon had given her a choice instead of a deal. You'd forgive her? For making the deal that condemned your bloodline? She was dying. Her children were dying. She made the choice any mother would make. The demon corrupted it, turned her gift into a curse. But the original choice was love. Lena stood, exhaustion falling away. I'm choosing love too. Love for the family I lost. Love for the patients I save. And she hesitated. Love for the broken monster who can't forgive himself for the one mercy he's ever shown. Kyle's expression shattered. Don't love me. I killed your family. I know. I remember. I'll carry it forever, and so will you. But the mate bond doesn't care about logic or justice or what should be. It just is. And I'd rather accept it than spend whatever time we have left fighting the inevitable. She touched the bite mark on her throat. You partially marked me. I feel everything you feel. Your guilt, your self-hatred, your desperate hope that somehow we both survive this. I can't separate my emotions from yours anymore. So if you're asking me to hate you, I can't. Because hating you would be hating part of myself. This is why marking was dangerous. But his hand came up, covered hers on the bite wound. You're losing yourself to the bond. Accepting things you shouldn't accept. Forgiving things that shouldn't be forgiven. Or maybe I'm finally letting myself feel something besides grief and guilt for the first time in 10 years. She leaned into him, felt the burning cold of his divided body. Maybe that's what the bond really does. Not corrupt or consume. Just crack open all the locked doors we use to protect ourselves from feeling too much. Through the partial mark, Lena felt Kale's control wavering. The angel side still screamed corruption. The demon side still roared possession. But the human part, growing stronger the more time he spent with her, whispered something different. Whispered hope. 36 hours, he said against her hair. Then I leave and you prepare. And when Azrael finds you at that house, you'll make him believe you're dead. You'll survive because you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for. And when it's over, when you fooled the greatest executioner in celestial history, you'll find me. And we'll build something normal from all this broken, impossible horror. Promise me something, Lena said. What? If I don't make it. If Azrael figures out the trick and I actually die. Don't do what he did with Seraphine. Don't keep serving them. Don't spend another 300 years being their weapon. Just let yourself finally rest. Kale pulled back, met her eyes. If you die, I won't survive long enough to make that choice. The second your heart stops permanently, the mate bond will tear me apart from the inside. I'll die screaming your name, and that'll be my justice for killing your family. That's not justice. That's just more tragedy. Then don't die. He kissed her forehead, burning and freezing. Live. Fool the executioner. Find me on the other side, and we'll figure out how to build normal from ashes and blood and choices that damned us both. Dawn light crept through the warehouse windows. Outside, Dallas was waking up. People heading to work, living ordinary lives, completely unaware that in a house on Maple Street tomorrow, night, A woman would die and come back and change everything. 36 hours until Azrael arrived. 36 hours until Lena returned to the place where her family burned and learned whether mercy was salvation or just cruelty in disguise. The lot on Maple Street looked exactly like Lena remembered, and nothing like it at all. The house was gone, reduced to a concrete foundation and scattered debris that nature had started reclaiming. Weeds pushed through cracks. Graffiti covered what remained of the front steps. But the shape was there. The ghost of where walls had stood, where her bedroom window had been, where David's room had shared a wall with hers. Lena arrived at midnight, exactly as planned. Cale had left at dawn, disappearing so thoroughly that even through the partial mark she could barely feel him. Just a distant pulse, miles away, getting farther. He was making himself the obvious target, drawing Azrael's attention while she prepared for the performance of her life. Her death, specifically. She stood in the center of where the living room had been and let the memories crash over her. Not the buried ones, sanitized by trauma and time. The real ones, unlocked by her awakening power and Cale's confession. She saw her father's face as Cale's blade opened his throat. Saw her mother swing David's baseball bat with desperate courage. Saw David pile furniture against his door, kitchen knife trembling in his hand, choosing to fight a monster to protect his baby sister. They'd died here, all three of them, bled out on floors that no longer existed, burned in flames that had turned wood and drywall and family photos to ash. And now she was going to die here too. Temporarily. Hopefully. Lena pulled off her jacket, laid it aside. She wore simple clothes, easy to move in. Her phone was tucked in her pocket, set to silent. Kyle had given her a burner number, one text message pre-written. It's done, heading to the rendezvous point. All she had to do was hit send once Azrael left. Once she'd convinced him she was dead. If she could convince him. Through the partial mark, she felt Cale's terror spiking. He was being tracked, hunted, leading Azrael on a chase through the city. Any minute now, the executioner would realize Cale had abandoned his mate, would turn his attention to finding the healer with demonic bloodline that needed purifying. Lena centered herself, felt for her power. It responded immediately, eager and hungry. 6 nights of training had transformed her from someone who healed instinctively to someone who understood exactly how bodies worked and how to manipulate them. She could stop her heart now with a thought, drop her body temperature in seconds, mimic every stage of death convincingly enough that even supernatural senses wouldn't detect the trick, for a few hours at least. That was her window. Die convincingly, stay dead long enough for Azrael to verify and leave, then bring herself back before the damage became permanent. Simple. Except for the part where one mistake meant actual death. Lena heard him before she saw him. Wings. Not physical wings, but the sound of them. Like wind through feathers, like the air itself parting for something that shouldn't exist in the material world. She spun, and there he was. Azrael was beautiful in the way winter storms were beautiful. Tall, impossibly pale, with white blonde hair and eyes that held no color at all. Just empty silver, like mirrors reflecting. Nothing. He wore modern clothes, jeans and a dark jacket, but carried himself like royalty, like something ancient wearing human costume for convenience. Unlike Cale's visible division, Azrael seemed unified, perfect. No war between angel and demon playing out on his skin. Whatever balance or corruption he'd achieved, it had integrated completely, made him something more dangerous than either side alone. Lena Martins. His voice was soft, almost kind. Last descendant of Elena Vasquez. You've been running for 10 years. I wasn't running. Lena kept her voice steady. I was living. There's a difference. Is there? He moved closer, not threatening, just inevitable, like watching a glacier advance. You built a life on borrowed time. Every patient you saved with stolen power. Every breath you took was theft from the natural order. Your great-grandmother made a deal she had no right to make, and you've been benefiting from that corruption your entire existence. My great-grandmother was desperate. She chose to save her children. She chose to traffic with demons. Azrael stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Lena could see he had no scars, no marks, no evidence of the war that destroyed other Nephilim. Choice doesn't absolve consequence, and the consequence of demonic deals is always death, for everyone touched by the corruption. Even children? Lena thought of herself at 7. I didn't make the deal. I was just born into it. Innocence doesn't matter. Cancer in an infant is still cancer. Corruption in a child is still corruption. But something flickered in his empty eyes. Cale thought differently. He saw you and chose mercy. Cost him everything. Where is he? Gone. Fled the city 6 hours ago. He's a coward at the end. Can't even stay to watch what his mercy wrought. Azrael tilted his head, studying her. Do you hate him for leaving you? I hate him for killing my family. True. The hate was real, would always be real, even alongside the impossible love. But I don't blame him for running. Survival isn't cowardice, isn't it? Azrael stepped closer. Seraphine didn't run. She stood in her bookshop and listened when I told her what I was, what she was to me, what the council had ordered. She looked at me with eyes that understood everything and said, "Then do it quickly. And don't spend the next 3 centuries hating yourself for giving me mercy." I wonder if Cale's shown you the same courage, or if he's taught you to run like he does. Lena's heart hammered. This was it. The moment. He taught me that some things are worth fighting for, and some things are worth dying for, but nothing's worth dying slowly. She reached for her power and stopped her own heart. The world lurched. Pain exploded through her chest as her heart stuttered, clenched, went still. Her lungs forgot how to draw breath. Her body temperature began dropping immediately, blood pressure plummeting. She'd practiced this 20 times on corpses, twice on herself under Cale's supervision with him, ready to restart her if something went wrong. But Cale wasn't here now. This was solo. All or nothing. Lena felt her consciousness starting to slip, held onto it desperately while her body mimicked death. She collapsed, felt concrete scrape her palms. Dimly, through fading senses, she felt Azrael kneel beside her, felt his hand pressed to her throat, checking for pulse. Finding none. Overdose, he murmured. She heard it from very far. Away, like sound through water. Pills, probably. Coward's way out. Couldn't face execution, so she took herself out first. His hand moved to her forehead. Pity. I would have made it quick. For Cale's sake, if nothing else. He loved you. In his broken way. Through the partial mark, Lena felt Cale screaming. Felt him turn around, start racing back toward Dallas. He thought she was really dying. Thought she'd taken the permanent way out rather than face Azrael. His agony poured through the bond. Like acid, corroding, desperate. She wanted to tell him it was okay. This was the plan. She was coming back. But she was too far gone, riding the edge of death. Consciousness a pinpoint in an ocean of dark. Azrael stood. She sensed rather than saw him pull out a phone. Heard him report to someone, somewhere. Target eliminated. Self-inflicted death. Location is the family home where the initial execution should have occurred 10 years ago. Full investigation recommended. We need to determine if the bloodline continues anywhere else. Minutes passed. Hours, maybe. Time worked differently this close to death. Lena held onto consciousness by her fingernails, feeling her body growing colder, cells starting to forget their function. She was approaching the window. Soon it would be too late to reverse. Soon death would transition from performance to reality. She felt Azrael's presence fade, heard footsteps retreating. Then silence. 5 more minutes, she told herself. Make sure he's really gone. Make sure this isn't a test. Through the bond, Cale was getting closer. She felt his panic, his grief, his absolute certainty that he'd lost her. He was coming back to the house, coming back to find her body, knowing it meant his own execution but unable to care, unable to survive losing his mate. Lena waited as long as she dared. Then, with the last scraps of consciousness, she reached for the threads. Her heart resisted. It had been still too long, was starting to accept death as permanent. She pushed harder, reminded it how to beat. Once, twice, a third time, stuttering and uneven. Her lungs expanded, drawing air that felt like knives. Her body temperature began climbing, blood pressure rising. She was coming back. It was working. Lena opened her eyes to see Cale kneeling over her, his face destroyed by grief. Steam poured from his left side. Frost coated his right. The war inside him was visible, overwhelming, tearing him apart. "I'm alive," she croaked. "I'm okay. It worked." He didn't respond, just pulled her against him, his body burning and freezing, and made sounds she'd never heard from him. Not screams. Something worse. The sounds of something breaking that had been held together by sheer will for too long. "Cale." She wrapped her arms around him. "I'm here. I did it. Azrael thinks I'm dead. We're safe. Don't ever do that again." His voice came out shattered. "I felt you die through the bond. Felt you slip away. I thought..." He couldn't finish. No. I felt you too. Felt you coming back even though you knew it meant death." She pulled back, met his mismatched eyes. We both chose each other. Over survival, over logic, over everything. That has to mean something. Through the partial mark, she felt his emotions in perfect clarity now. Relief, warring with trauma. Love tangled with grief. Hope and despair in equal measure. He'd spent 250 years being torn between angel and demon. Now he was torn between the woman he loved and the knowledge that loving her had almost destroyed them both. "What do we do now?" he asked. Lena looked around the lot where her family had died, where she'd just died and come back, where Azrael had stood over her body and reported mission complete. The past was ash and memory. The present was borrowed time. But the future? The future was unwritten. We do what you said. We disappear. New names, new city, new lives. I'll find work as a nurse under a fake identity. You'll find something that doesn't involve killing. We'll build normal from all this impossible horror. She stood, helped him up. And maybe someday, when we've had enough distance from tonight, we'll figure out whether what we have is love or just trauma and biology. But right now, I don't care which it is. I just want to survive long enough to find out. Cale pulled out a phone, different from the ones they'd been using. "I have identities ready. Papers, credentials, everything. There's a town in Montana. Population 3,000, no supernatural presence for 100 miles in any direction. Remote enough that the Celestials don't monitor it. We can start there." "Montana." Lena tested the word. "I've never seen mountains. You'll hate the winter. Worse than Texas. Good thing I have a personal space heater." She touched his left side, felt the burning warmth that never stopped. "When do we leave?" "Now, tonight. We drive until we hit the state line. Then we ditch this car and get another. Keep moving until we're so far from Dallas that Azrael would need a reason to look for us. And he won't have one. You're dead on paper. I'm a traitor in the wind. We're both ghosts." They walked away from the lot together. Behind them, the place where Lena's family had burned, where she'd learned what her power could do, where she'd died and come back and claimed her life on her own terms, instead of letting the Celestials dictate it. At the car, she paused, pulled out her phone and sent the pre-written text to Cale's burner. "It's done. Heading to the rendezvous point. Then she threw the phone into the weeds and got in the passenger seat. Kyle drove. They didn't speak for the first hour, just let the city lights fade behind them. Through the partial mark, Lena felt his emotions settling. The war between angel and demon still raged, probably always would. But underneath, something new was building. Something that felt almost like peace. "Tell me about Montana," she said finally. "What's the town like?" "Small, quiet, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, but they mind their own business. There's a hospital, small but well-equipped. They're always looking for ER nurses. You could work there, build a reputation, save lives without anyone asking questions about how you're so good at it. And you? I don't know yet. Honest. I've been a killer for 250 years. It's the only skill I have. But maybe there's something else. Security work, maybe. Construction. Something where I use my strength, but not for execution. We'll figure it out." Lena reached across the console, found his hand. The burning cold of his touch had become familiar. Comforting, even. "We have time now. Real time. Not borrowed or stolen. Just ours." They drove through the night, putting miles between themselves and the life Lena had built from ash and grief. Behind them, Dallas slept, unaware that in an overgrown lot on Maple Street, a woman had died and come back, and cheated an executioner who'd never failed a mission. Ahead, somewhere in the dark, Montana waited. Mountains and snow, and a town small enough that two ghosts could build something resembling normal. "I still hate you," Lena said quietly, "for killing them. That won't ever go away completely." "I know." Kale's thumb traced circles on her palm. "I hate myself too. 243 executions, and yours is the only one that haunts me. The only one that made me question everything." "Good. You should be haunted. We both should be." She leaned her head against the window, watched the highway blur past. But maybe haunting is just remembering. And remembering means they're not really gone. David, my parents, even Seraphine. They live in the choices we make because of them. The person I became because of what you did. What you didn't do. That's their legacy. Is that forgiveness? No. It's something harder. It's choosing to carry the weight instead of being crushed by it. She closed her eyes. "You asked me once what normal looks like. I think this is it. Not perfect, not happy. Just two broken people who survived the unsurvivable and decided that was enough. That they were enough." Through the partial mark, she felt Kale's response. Not words, just feeling. Raw and honest and terrifying in its vulnerability. He loved her. Completely. Impossibly. In the way that came from staring into someone's soul and accepting every terrible, beautiful, broken piece. And she loved him back. Despite everything. Because of everything. In the way that came from dying and being brought back by hands that had once destroyed everything she held dear. The sun rose behind them, painting the highway gold. Ahead, the road stretched endless. Montana. New names. New lives built from blood and mercy and choices that damned them both. It wasn't forgiveness. Wasn't redemption. Wasn't anything resembling a fairy tale ending. But it was survival. And sometimes, survival was enough. Sometimes love doesn't heal the wounds. It just makes them worth carrying. Lena and Kale's story forces us to confront an impossible question. Can we forgive the unforgivable if the person who destroyed us is also the only one fighting to keep us alive? Would you have the courage to face your family's killer and see past the monster to the broken soul beneath? Could you strip yourself bare of pride, of justified hatred, of every defense you've built, and choose survival with the person who took everything from you? Their journey isn't about redemption or forgiveness. It's about something far more complex. Acceptance that we're all capable of terrible things and beautiful sacrifices, sometimes in the same breath. In the end, they didn't get a fairy tale. They got borrowed time, new names, and the weight of choices that will haunt them forever. but they got to choose each other. Flaws and blood, and impossible circumstances included. Maybe that's what real love looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the decision to carry it together instead of alone. Their ghosts found peace not in forgetting, but in remembering why survival mattered more than perfection. If this story moved you, made you question what you'd do in their place, or left you thinking about the price of mercy and the cost of survival, please like this video and share it with someone who appreciates stories that don't shy away from the complicated truth of being human. Subscribe to the channel for more tales that explore the beautiful, broken spaces between right and wrong, love and hate, monster and savior. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that refuse to give us easy answers. They just ask us what we'd be willing to sacrifice for one more day with the person our soul recognizes as home, no matter how wrong that recognition might be.